everybody. This is Lori, and I am the founder and CEO of Inclusivity, and we are all about justice and kindness. And this is our podcast, Inclusivi-TALKS. And today we are incredibly fortunate to have one of the artists who is participating in our Artists Who Share auction, and Black Lives Matter St. Paul and One Love, One Mission, and other organizations. So I want to introduce our artist. Today our artist is Viera Margova. Is that close?
That's correct.
Okay. Wonderful to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Laurie. Finally.
We've been planning this for probably 3 weeks or more, and one or the other of us would have just a conflict or something come up. And we actually planned it for one of the days on 4th of July, because with how strange things are right now, we both forgot that it was 4th of July, and you ended up having a family thing that you got to see your daughter. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's so nice. So Viera, I always like to start these conversations by just asking a little bit about your history. And since we're talking about you as an artist, I'd like to know when you first sort of knew you were creative and how that started for you.
Well, I don't consider myself to be an artist. I just do art for fun because it's incredible relief and therapy for me, really, to do, in my spare time. When I was growing up, I was more sports related. I was in downhill skiing and athletics like volleyball, basketball, running, 50, 60, 100 meters, long jump. So I was not really doing a lot of art. My sister was the one who actually was the artist in the family. She studied history of art. And so I was always, my life, I was always surrounded with art. And there was always a lot of discussions about art in our family. But when I was growing up, we had a very good art teacher in my grade school and high school. And art was very important, was part of the education. And then I had children, so I painted a little bit before I had kids. And then when I had children, raising children and working full time. And so I kind of stopped painting. And since my both daughters are, one is in college, Sydney is in Minnesota, Minneapolis, and she's one of the artists as well. Yeah. Contributing to the show, which is very exciting. And that's how we actually connected through her. Yeah. And and the other daughter is out of house, living in her own little studio here in Milwaukee. So now I have more time for myself. So I picked up art again, and I started painting. So it's a fun hobby, and I have quite stressful job sometimes. So it's really nice to kind of turn it off and really express my feelings, frustrations, hope, happiness, and desires, name it, on canvas. So I have been painting for a while, and I'm surrounded with a lot of canvases. So this was kind of a good opportunity to, share it for a great cause.
Well, and it's so beautiful. And I, not only is Sydney in our auction, your daughter Sydney, and she's incredibly talented, but a friend of hers, whose name is Madeline, actually knows you and told me that your house is just full of your beautiful paintings. And Madeline does some work for us sometimes on social media and photography. Yeah. And so very exciting to have you in the auction as well. Okay. And so you were more into sports when you were young, but it sounds like art was very much encouraged in your home.
Yes. My sister studied history of art, and she also painted and also is involved with a lot of artists over in Europe and organizes a lot of international exhibits, and it's called Bridges, kind of bridging different cultures. And they always bring different artists to the country, and then they go and display their art as well, in a foreign country. So she has traveled around the world, and she's quite well connected. And so it was always about art. It's always about art, about sculptures, architecture. So it was always very exciting to hear the stories and adventures.
So what kind of painting do you do?
I do acrylic on canvas. I started in grade school and high school when I was much younger. It was always watercolor. And then I started later on. I started using acrylic, and then I transitioned to oil. However, oil takes forever to dry, and I'm impatient enough to wait till it dries. So I switched over to acrylic. However, sometimes it just dries too fast. So there is a different
Sure.
kind of method to it, right? So there's madness to everything, right? So it's
Yes.
really acrylic multimedia or mixed media. So I actually use crushed glass
Mhm.
sometimes, or different textures of paper, which I glue to canvas, and
Yeah.
then it gives you this kind of erased feel for it. And I really like sometimes, sections which are more kind of like 3D, and you can really kind of touch them. So it's kind
And
of a
is the piece that you donated to us a,
yes.
a multi
Yeah, mixed media. Yeah, that particular
mixed
piece
media?
does
Yeah.
have, yeah, the textured kind of a heavy texture paper, and then there are a number of layers of paint over it, and there is a method to it, I guess.
How did you decide to do the mixed media?
I don't know. I I I just felt that it needed something more, a little more oomph
Mhm.
to it. So I just and most of them, not all of them, do have that, but most of them do. Yeah, I kind
I
of
just
like that you can touch it. You can, it's kind of really extending from the canvas itself. So
Yeah, I like that a lot and very interesting. So, why acrylics instead of watercolor? What drew you to the acrylic paint?
oh, yeah, watercolor. When I was older, I never went to watercolor. I really like richness, and I like really bold colors, and I like brush strokes and hues of color.
Mhm.
And watercolor really didn't do much for me. So I don't know. When I paint, it's really my emotions and my feelings, and I feel like I need to put more out there. So that's why acrylic is really it's really working for me.
So, what job do you do? You said your job is sometimes stressful.
Oh, yeah, so I am in a very, very interesting field. For some people, probably very boring, but I find it very fascinating. So I'm in advanced healthcare analytics field, fighting really fraud, waste, and abuse in the United States. And I have a team of brilliant developers, programmers across the country who actually mine data for fraudulent activities. So, opioid crisis and,
Yeah.
now COVID-19. And so at the end of the day, it really feels good that we are really making a difference. And it can be quite stressful, working with data. Data tells you a story because data is science and
Mhm.
it doesn't lie, right? So it tells you the story, and it doesn't matter what culture you come from, what language you speak, where were you born or nothing. It just tells you the story. The same thing like with painting. So it's a really very different kind of story with
Mhm.
paintings versus data. So I find it very fascinating, and it kind of balances, what I do for a living, and then my painting, which is completely different kind of media.
Yeah, it's completely different, but as you talk about it and you talk about telling a story
Yeah.
and the way you talk about the data, I would say that they're interwoven,
Yep.
very different, but also for
Exactly.
you sort of interwoven and why you care about both of them.
Exactly. Like the story of the paint, when we look at different models,
Mhm.
and from data perspective, and different trends, what's
Mhm.
going on with this data, it tells you the story, but it's very specific, right? Because it's data, numbers and graphs and so forth. With painting, painting tells you a different story. Why did you move your brush certain way, right? Because you had a certain feeling. You're telling a certain story. The other day I was painting something, and it came out completely different than I anticipated. It just, and when I walk away, and the next day I come back, and so many times I change things around. Like
Mhm.
I just, my mood and how I feel, and no, this doesn't feel right, and suddenly it's coming out completely different. So I actually found the other day, I was just sitting and I had blank canvas in front of me, and I realized that how intimidating sometimes it can be. You know, like you have an image what you want to paint, and then you start painting, and it's like, oh, you know, like, oh, this is not really coming as I imagined it, and actually it always turns out to be something
Right.
completely different. And but I realized like, oh, this white canvas canvas is so intimidating today for whatever reason. I don't know why, but it was.
So
So
do you go into most of your paintings, Viera, having a vision of what you're going to do, even though it doesn't turn out that way, but you have something in your
oh
head, or
yeah.
do you ever
Yes,
just start?
yes, I always feel like, okay, well, today I'm going to have blue day, okay, white blues and maybe a little gold here and there or whatever, and then I have red and orange, and some people are like, wow, this is really, you know, strong. Well, I had strong feelings that day, or you know, I had a rough day or whatever it was, or hopeful day, you know. So sometimes I do end up repainting the painting, and it has happened to me that it was white and blue, and sounded like, ooh. The other day Sydney came, and I said, well, I, you know, I have a new one, and she said, and wasn't this blue and white before? And I said, yeah, now it's completely different color, right? It's like, why did you do that? I really liked it. I said, well, I didn't, and I'm an artist.
And it's yours. It's yours. You get
Consider
to
myself
decide.
to be artist. Yeah, so it's mine, and I said, right, exactly. It's mine. It's my prerogative, you know. So yes.
Before you started really, because you know, when your children were young and you really couldn't paint, and then when you picked it up again and started, do you think your family knew how you how much it was going to become important to you, and how good you are at it? Do you
Well,
think
I
they
don't know how good I am. You know, as I said, you know, I do it for fun, and I find it satisfying, and I
Mhm.
feel gratitude, and I feel that I have ability to do that. And I don't know if it is good or bad, but I like it. So, you know, and it's important to me, and other people like it too. You know, I gave paintings to friends as presents, and some people ask, you know, can you paint something for me? You know, so I am, you know, and I have all these 30 canvases here. It's like, what am I going to do with all of them? You know, maybe I should start selling them or something. But it's something what really gives me kind of a gratitude and inner satisfaction.
Mhm.
And I don't know about my family. You know, my sister is so much better than I am, and not that I'm comparing myself, but to be honest, is you know, there are a lot of paintings in the world where people love it, and some people don't love that
Mhm.
particular piece. So it's so subjective, you know.
Yeah,
So
it's
it
subjective.
is. I just need to feel good about the painting myself, and I think that's
Mhm.
important. And if somebody finds this beautiful and lovely, you know, that's great.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Now, have you tried other mediums besides, this mixed media and acrylic?
No, no, not really.
Okay.
No,
You
I
think this is enough?
well, yeah, right now, and there
Yeah.
are other materials which I am considering. Actually, I picked other things, you know, which potentially I could incorporate into the paintings, but I have not tried it yet. So I'm just entertaining thought.
That's interesting. So where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Europe. I was born and raised and educated there in Slovak Republic,
Mhm.
former Czechoslovakia, and and then I came to the United States many years ago. So majority of my life I've been living in the United States. So I consider that to be my home, although I go home often. As a matter of fact, I was in Europe at the beginning of March. I went to Paris for my birthday. So yes, I'm glad that I did that with my sister. So we met.
Mhm.
She still lives in Slovak Republic, and so we met there, and then we ventured to Antwerp and Ghent in Belgium. So we had a lovely time. There was another exhibit which was the open in Antwerps, and so we went to that exhibit as well.
Now, are you still engaged in any athletics, any running, or anything like that?
No, well, I was skiing competitively since, well, I was skiing since I was two, and then later on, I was a competitive skier. But then I broke my ACL, and I had a surgery a couple times. So when I was 18, I quit skiing, and I realized I need to go and get some education because I probably will not be able to make a living from skiing. But no, not anymore. My knee is pretty compromised, so I walk and bike and swim occasionally
Okay.
and do yoga, stretching, and stuff like that.
So you're active, just not in the same way that you were.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
And were you thinking that you would be a professional skier? Is that
Oh
what your
no,
plan was prior
no,
to?
no, 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 no. It was just I was the city where I grew up was in the mountains and
Mm,
like 5 minutes the best skiing area. So a lot of people ski there. It was just given, beautiful mountainous area. So that's why I went into skiing. It was a lot of fun. It taught me a lot: tenacity, perseverance, integrity, and really setting up the goals and push yourself hard. And really to, um, when you decide to do something, you shouldn't just give up. You just need to stick to that. Even, and it taught me a lot of, many times, we fail. There is only one winner most of the time. So to teach, the sport, and specifically individual sport, really teaches you um, how to deal emotionally and mentally with failure, right? And
yeah.
and I apply that a lot, with jobs, with relationships, with relationships at work, and all of that. So it was a great, and I was involved with skiing for 16 years, so it was a very good good journey to teach me a lot about life and how to apply it, those
And did
skills.
you say you started skiing at 2?
Yes, that's the first time when my parents took me skiing. Yes,
How do
was
you I mean, can you how do you ski at 2? That just seems so young.
well. I remember my dad took me, between his two legs,
Okay.
literally, and we were skiing kind of like this together. And his best friend was a sports teacher, a gym teacher, and
Mhm.
he was watching me. In a playground and told my parents that I had a very good physique for sports, and I was pretty flexible, and was watching me and suggested that if they would consider to put me into this little ski team, and then that was the end of it. So yeah.
And you loved it.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. Yes.
Yeah. So this actually what you were just talking about sort of segues really nicely into if you had to sort of sum up your life philosophy, sort of how you choose to live your life or how you view the world, any of that, what would you say?
Well, I know that there is a lot of pain, and specifically now, and and it's a chaos and everything, but I always viewed the world as world of opportunities, of kindness and goodness, and there are bad people in the world, and majority are good people. So I know that kindness, if you ever want to be anything and choose to be anything, be kind. It's important, and I always see silver lining with a lot of things, even if bad things are happening, it always teaches you a lesson. However, you just never know what it is good for. You wonder, why does this is this happening? Maybe at that moment you just don't know what it was good for, but eventually you're going to figure it out. And what's happening globally right now, it's teaching us a lot, how to be kind, how to take care of each other, how to have integrity, and really, we are all, really, when people say we are all in it together, it's just not a phrase. We truly are all in it together, and makes me frustrating a lot of times, the disrespect of and ignorance, and denying science. And since I'm working in advanced healthcare analytics, science is very important. Data tells you the story. And I just don't understand when just people will say, well, it's not true and I will beat it or whatever. It's just the disrespect of another human being and of specific rules. And even when we talk about, and I don't want to get into politics, but when people say that it's about freedom, but this is, yes, if we do not have people, we are all sick, freedom is irrelevant at that point, right? So, anyways,
It
so
feels
I,
misplaced.
right, exactly. Yeah.
So I think I love that you said that because I think even in the worst of situations that feel insurmountable, I think
Mhm.
we can learn things that help us then surmount
Right.
the
Exactly.
difficulty. And I think
Right.
in some ways, having to face things like systemic racism,
Hmm.
if we have to face it, if it is right in our faces and we can no longer pretend it doesn't happen, then we can do something about it.
Right.
We can't do anything about it until we do.
Right, exactly. And it's, coming from Europe where countries are so close together, I was always fascinated with different cultures, and my parents love to travel. So since we were little, me and my sister, they always took us traveling wherever we could travel. And I always was, even when it's, people say, Europeans are kind of the same. Well, they are not, right? Each country has a different culture and different customs and habits and whatever. And I was always fascinated with traveling and with different cultures. So there was always so much acceptance, that we really have the same blood, the same red blood, circulating in our veins, and really treating people differently because of the pigment of their skin, to me, is just like I cannot even put my brain around it, right? But I still have to learn myself, and I'm learning and checking every day,
Mhm.
even where there was that acceptance and everything, but there's so much to learn and study, and so much work which needs to get done. It's just the tip of the iceberg, and it's not going to happen overnight. So we just need to really push and work together.
Yeah.
So
I love the way you just said that too, because it sounded to me like what you were saying is it's up to you and up to me to do
mhm,
that studying and
right,
to figure it out
right,
and not just wait for someone to drop it in our laps or explain it to us, but instead take responsibility for learning. Just
exactly,
as you did when you went to school, when you learned your job, you took
right,
responsibility for those things.
hmm,
And I think that's a wonderful way to look at it.
yeah, right.
So if you were telling, and some of this you've already covered, but I just want you to think for a minute about how you would word it. If you were telling someone coming up, um, someone much younger, either about life or about art or just something, if you were giving a piece of advice, what do you think it would be?
Well, it really depends on the kid, right? Everybody has different aspirations for life, and every person, every DNA is, really, expressing their own hopes different way. Some people write poetry, actually write a little poetry. I was thinking that maybe I should publish the book. I have maybe like 30 little poetry poems, which are different, but so everyone is expressing himself or herself a different way, writing, reading, sports. People have wonderful speeches, a gift for speech or acting. So there is always a different facets of implementation of those desires or how people are expressing themselves. So I just would tell anybody or any child, just don't get discouraged if you have your goals high. Set them high, because a sky is a limit. And don't get discouraged. How many times we fell when we were little and we were walking, and we still got up and keep walking. Just keep walking, keep pushing, don't give up, because it's just easy to give up and shut the door. So it's view it as art. It helps you from many perspectives, as I said at the beginning, and I don't want to repeat myself, but it helps a lot to express those emotions, if they are good and bad and frustrating and beautiful and musical or whatever. They tell you the story. I painted a painting the other day, and it was for one particular person, and I can totally explain why I painted that particular section the way, because that painting actually tells the story, and the person probably would get it if I would
Mhm.
start leading the person. So going back to your question, is that I would just tell the child, don't give up, just keep pushing, and tenacity and perseverance really, really do pay off. Sometimes it takes many, many, many years, but eventually it will pay off. So
And I think that what's really interesting for me as I've been interviewing more of the artists who are involved in Artists Who Share, that that sense of art just being a way to open up your world is so universal.
yeah.
And as you were talking, I actually into my head popped an image of one of our artists whose name is Shedrack Musioki, is from Kenya, and he teaches art classes at his local museum to small children. And so he sent us some photos of him doing that, and that's his whole message:
Mm.
is express yourself, find a way to talk, to work on your feelings, and to really art can be healing and can help us move forward. And so I just love that when I hear these themes
Yeah.
that kind of go through.
And specifically, some children, there are introverts and extroverts, and some people have gift of speech, and can talk and talk and talk, and some people can. So children, those who are more timid and they didn't come out of their own shell, it's a good way to put those words on a piece of paper, on canvas, to express that. So it's critical. And my both of my kids were involved in a lot of pottery and a lot of very good daycare and childcare when they were little, because I went back to work after 2 months after I delivered them. So I also was always working full time. But these really these daycare centers, well, this particular one they both went to, had incredible art teachers and guidance, and I was really, thankful, because I think art and music is so extremely important in child's life and development from brain perspective. And I thought it was very important for them to be involved with art from such an early childhood. And both of them are very good sketchers and sculptors, and Sydney has proven it from so many different facets and perspectives: photography and sketching and painting, and yeah. So
Yeah, yeah, I think that's yeah. I think it's just to allow children to have that expressiveness is really important, and I think makes for better adults. I think
exactly,
it just makes us more rounded and more compassionate.
exactly, exactly. And appreciate, that beauty. I always think, like, I just to find a beauty. Not everything what's beautiful
Mhm.
should be beautiful or is beautiful, right? Like, I find beauty. I collect shells
Mhm.
because I love shells and rocks, and walk on the beach. I just look at them. They are like treasures of
Mhm.
the world, and they are just so beautiful. So, to find beauty in a stick you find in the woods, right? Is beautiful. So just to have that ability to find beauty in anything or anybody, as a human being, as a thing, or as a animal or a living thing, is just, it's a gift. So
Gift. My one daughter, when she was little, this year, you just reminded me of this story. would every time we went outside would come up and give me something and say, I found this rock, I found this flower, I found this twig, and I found it just for you. And so by the time she was 10, I had pockets full of these treasures, and I still have most of them because they were such treasures to her. And every time that she
Yes.
said it, it was this just poignant moment of finding beauty in the smallest, simplest little thing, and then wanting to share that with me.
At that moment, she was thinking about you, so it's hard
Exactly.
to discard it. I know I have boxes and boxes of art from my children when they
Yep.
first time drew a line and they are looking at me like, Mom, throw it away. It's in the attic. It's like, we will never look at it. It's like, yeah, but you know how important that was for me. And still,
Right.
I cannot part with this. Like, okay, when I die, you can
Then they
just
can do whatever they want with it.
exactly just throw it away because I have so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a special. So,
It's so special. So,
yeah.
Vera, I always like to end the interviews by first saying, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you would like to talk about?
Um, well, I think that the world needs music and art and acting and you know I wish everybody in the world would have ability and opportunity to travel in the world and understand different cultures and meet people and really to absorb the beauty of this world. We have only one chance on this planet, and we need to take care of it better from environmental perspective. But yes, I know that not everybody is able to do that, but really, to we need to stick together, and we need to believe in science, and we just be kind to each other. Integrity and honesty and kindness is on my top three, and I everybody knows that at work. I always tell my team, don't make promises you cannot keep. If
Mhm.
you're going to tell somebody you're going to deliver that report on Friday at 5 o'clock, it better be there because then we will not, we will ruin our reputation. So don't make promises you can't keep. And I raise my children that way as well. If you tell somebody that you're going to do something, you better stick to that or have a good reason if you can't deliver. So integrity is very important, and just be honest and kind to each other. We really do need to take care of each other.
Those are wonderful, wonderful pieces of advice, and that everybody we really should try to use. So, the last thing that I like to always ask people is to think back over their life and just tell us a story. And just to preface that, I will say that people have told all kinds of stories. That my story about my daughter with the rocks would have been a perfect story to tell. I had someone tell me about sort of a spiritual experience they had, but I had someone else tell me about trying to fry an egg on the sidewalk when they were a child. So anything that sort of pops into your head that is just a story that for some reason feels like you.
Okay. So there are a lot of stories, and I don't know which one to pick. But I would go back to when I was 19, and I was supposed to go to travel across Europe with my best friend, and we planned the trip to go together. And then month before we were leaving, her parents decided not to let her go. So now I was in front of this dilemma. What am I going? I'm going through Europe by myself. So I asked my parents if they would let me go, and bless their hearts, they did let me go by myself. So I hitchhiked by myself, and this was many, many years ago, through Austria, Switzerland, France, and Germany. And it was probably the best time, one of the best times. There I have many best times in my life, but it was one of really highlights of my life because I met incredible bunch of people, and I hitchhiked and I took trains and buses. And when I hitchhiked, there was some rough moments, not rough moments, they were kind of moments which crossed my mind like, maybe this was not such a great idea. But I was safe, and I met incredible people who offered me shelter and food and helped me. And I studied English, and German when I was living back home. And but I didn't speak French. So when I traveled through Austria, through Switzerland, I had a lot of friends in Switzerland. So it was I stayed with them, and then I traveled all the way to Zermatt, to Megève, and then I was in France, and I don't speak French, and and I was hitchhiking all the way to Paris, and I'll tell you, it was the best trip ever because it taught me a lot about myself. There were situations where, I was dropped off at 10 o'clock at night and I didn't know, in a strange city, I didn't know a person. And, but anyways, it taught me a lot, how to be vigilant, how to make right decisions, not to panic, stay calm, and just was exposed to different people, different culture. And in France, I didn't speak the language, so it was really with hands and gestures and everything. And then Paris, really traveling. I fell in love with traveling then, and I told myself that I will always travel. And if I ever have children, that they will have to travel, basically, because it's if you travel and you meet different people and different culture, and you're exposed to so much, from food perspective, culture perspective, it cannot be taught in school, even if they will tell you, okay, this is this culture. And yes, you can learn a lot from textbooks, but when you actually experience it, physically and mentally, emotionally, it's a completely different story. So I think that was probably one of very important moments of
Yeah.
my life. That
Can you tell us one just really specific little story from that trip?
Yeah, so I had this humongous backpack, which was 2 feet above my head.
Yeah.
You know, gym shoes, gym shoes,
Yeah.
and on my feet, and a t-shirt, and a little hoodie, and blue jeans. And
Mhm.
so I was hitchhiking, and actually it was on a border between Switzerland to France and to Megève. And I was hitchhiking, okay, and nobody was stopping because they saw this humongous, backpack, and nobody was stopping. And so then and it just clicked on me, people are coming by, and nobody was really stopping. It's like, well, I really need to get somewhere because it was getting a little late. So I took my backpack off and I kind of put it aside so you couldn't really see it. It was in the ditch, and this car stopped. And of course, the guy, when he saw that I had this backpack, he took off and he didn't. It's like, well, this is not really good. I really need to get somewhere because I need accommodation. And this next car came through, and there were three people in the car. There were two guys and a girl was sitting on the front seat. Another guy was driving, and two guys were actually three boys and a girl, and two guys were on the back and sitting on the back seat. So they stopped, and of course they are telling me something, in French, and I didn't understand. And they opened the trunk, they put the backpack to the trunk, and they set me between two of them in the back seat. And she was sitting up front, and we were driving, and they were talking, and suddenly she opens this little bag up front, and she takes a knife and she cuts like this half of the sausage. So
Okay.
that was a moment like, oh, and she handed the sausage to me, to share the food. But there was kind of a startled moment, like I'm sitting between two guys, in
Right.
the back. My backpack is in the trunk. I don't know where we are going, and I just keep telling them the destination I needed to go. But then they started sharing food with me, and they opened a bottle of wine. It was suddenly a party in the backseat. That was a moment like, oh, I don't know if this was a good idea, but it was all great, and they dropped me off exactly. I had an address, and they actually went out of their way, I don't know, an hour and a half, to drop me off exactly where I
Wow.
was supposed to go, yes, and they were going somewhere else, and then I was staying with a friend of mine, and then continuing to Paris. So
And did they speak any English or German?
no,
And you spoke no French?
I spoke no French. I had just basic French
Oh
words,
my goodness.
what to eat and what's the station, where's station, and police, and good night,
Right.
and bon appetit, and really just basic stuff. So, and that's why it's so
Yeah,
important to speak languages too. It's really important.
yeah,
To because then you can really understand that culture even better if you have that connection.
yeah. Well, language matters, words matter, and
Yeah.
so
All
I
words
think that
matter.
they're important, and so
Yeah,
because of that,
yeah, yeah.
I think that's really lovely. What a great story. This has been just a pleasure. I again, thank you so much for being in the auction. Thank you so much for raising Sydney because she's fantastic, and I can only imagine your other daughter is as well.
Thank
And
you for
thank you for being on here with me because what a pleasure to get to know you better. And I like you even more than I did before this, and that was a lot. So,
Thank
so
you so
thank
much. Appreciate it. So next time, when we do something else next year, please count on me. I
Oh,
hope
thank
I
you.
can be instrumental, maybe even helping out in different way. And I would really like that. I would really
I
like.
will definitely reach out. I This has been so amazing and successful that I'm really excited to see what we can do and maybe even, at some point talk to your sister and we've already have some international artists, so it'd be
Yeah,
awfully fun
yeah, yeah.
just to expand you know what I mean? Just to
Right,
expand the
right.
story and
I
the
just would need more time so that I can explain it because
yes,
it's
we need a year.
international. Yes, but we need a year exactly so I can gear them up. So
I
yeah.
think September we'll start planning for August next year.
Okay,
I
that
think
sounds
this
good
was just
because then I
this was
can
just a
involve
faster.
yeah, maybe I can involve other cultures as well.
Yeah, I think that would be lovely. Thank you again so much for being here. And everybody, this is Inclusivi-TALKS, which is our podcast. I'm Lori and this is Viera. And thank you so much for watching.
Much. Have a great evening. Take care. Bye bye.
If she's a mountain